Hey, what's up guys? Imagine being the esteemed princess of a small country who's just been admitted into a high school academy of blazers. Basically magic knights, to further your talents. Having trained since a young age, you've become the strongest in your country. And you're so strong, most people mistake it for just having talent. Until your first day at the academy, where the weakest student with no magic accidentally peeps on you changing in your room. And after battling in a duel and losing to him, he acknowledges how hard you've really worked. And now you've learned there's more to him than meets the eye. This is the fantastic, fun, and wacky story of Chivalry of a Failed Knight. So let's get started and watch the story unfold. Television news is blaring everywhere about the second princess of the Vermillion Empire, Stella Vermillion, visiting Japan today. She was officially accepted at Hagen Magic Knight Academy, located in Tokyo, by achieving the highest entrance exam scores of all time, and she's said to be the strongest, most gifted knight. In the car, Stella sighed, finally getting a breather from all the press, and was welcomed warmly by the academy principal, Kurono Shinguji, before they were driven off to the academy. Back in her dorm, she could have never expected a boy to walk in on her changing. Before she could utter her distaste, the boy, Ikki Kurogane, stopped her, already assuming she was going to call him a pervert. He wanted to man up and not make excuses like saying he didn't see anything, but instead offered to take off his clothes to call it even. However, this only resulted in her screaming and the sound of a loud slap. In the principal's office, the director began scolding Ikki, reminding him Hagen Academy is widely known to have the best track records among all Magic Knight schools in Japan. And at the 7-Star Battle Festival, an annual event that decides the strongest student knight, Hagen's school representatives have won almost every year, except the last 3 where they only placed 5th, 4th, and 6th. She had taken up the role of director recently to rebuild the school's reputation, and wasn't pleased to hear Ikki's act of misconduct possibly smearing her work. Ikki tried explaining it was an accident, but hearing that he both peeped at a girl and took off his own clothes wasn't going to fly. But he insisted his intentions were for it to be 50-50, and at least in the moment, had thought of it as gentlemanlike. The director then told him he better take responsibility like a gentleman then, and with a snap of her fingers, Stella entered the office. Still slightly embarrassed, Ikki went to her and bowed his head, trying to take responsibility. So, Stella commended him, even though she could make this an international issue. She'd forgive him if he committed seppuku. He thought she was just jesting, but she reminded him he was the one who suggested doing whatever she asked. However, he didn't want to pay with his life for what he considered to be such a little thing. But Stella wasn't having it. With her powering up, the director exited the room. Intense flames surrounded Stella, and she declared any commoner like Ikki who insults her would be burned to ashes. The flames then caused the fire alarm to go off. She walked towards Ikki, accusing him of sneaking into her room, defiling her skin, looking at her naked with an indecent look in his eyes, as if he were licking and mocking her body. He admitted truthfully he did stare at her, but it was because she was so beautiful, he couldn't take his eyes off of her. Hearing this, Stella's flames immediately dispelled, and the sprinklers finally went off, soaking them both. As an innocent princess, she'd never heard a man casually calling an unmarried woman like herself beautiful so easily. Ikki then mentioned he heard her say her room earlier, but brought up the fact that it was actually his room. This is when the director re-entered to say she forgot to mention, but starting today, they're actually roommates. Back at their dorm, the director brought the Vermillion name tag to add next to Kurogane. Ikki was surprised to learn this, since only students of the same level are supposed to be roommates. He wondered why an A rank like Stella would be rooming with a flunky like himself, an F rank. Stella was shocked to hear Ikki was the lowest ranked student in the school, and he explained the only spell he could use just did a minimum enhancement to his physical abilities. On top of that, his total pool of magic is only 1/10 of the average person's. His nickname at school is actually the worst one. Literally, he's the weakest at the academy. This was part of the director's justification. She wanted to pair the weakest knight with the strongest. However, Stella was a mess, asking what if a mistake happened while the two of them were alone, making the director sneer a bit, replying, "Oh, what kind of mistake?" The director then explained there are other male and female students paired up in the dorms as well, and Stella accepted this. But only on 3 conditions. Ikki can't talk to her, open his eyes, or breathe, and if he followed the rules, he would be allowed to live in the front of the room. Ikki objected to these ridiculous notions, of course, but Stella didn't want him smelling her or breathing her air pervertedly. The director then told them to stop because chivalry is about deciding one's destiny with their sword, and told them to do a mock battle where whoever wins gets to decide the rules of the room. Ikki gladly accepted. Another surprise to Stella because he's the weakest, but with the mention of how hard he's worked, she gets mildly irritated and accepts the challenge. Only, not just with the rules of the room at stake, but the loser must also now obey the winner for the rest of their life. Preparing in her changing room, Stella was still hung up on Ikki having said, "I'm working somewhat hard." She thought back to her childhood where her mother pleaded for her to stop putting herself through so much struggle to become a knight. But Stella knew a small nation like theirs needed someone powerful to lead it. She promised she'd do whatever it takes. She didn't care how hard she needed to work. As she made her way to the arena, the other students spoke in hushed whispers of the Crimson Princess, who was known as a gifted genius that had everything given to her in life. They were surprised to hear she even entertained the idea of fighting an F-rank knight. Ikki had his own purpose for this battle. Knowing he'd have to face Stella at some point, he might as well do it now. He had goals to win the 7-star battle festival, because if he did, he'd be allowed to graduate despite his low scores. He knows a person as strong as Stella would qualify to compete with ease. Finally arriving, Stella brought up the rumors about Ikki having so weak of an ability level, he wasn't even allowed to take classes on actual fighting. She thought it'd just be best if he stopped trying to become a magic knight altogether. However, he had no intentions of quitting this match. She asked him if he was the type to think hard work could beat talent. With him mentioning he believed so, Stella flashed back to when she defeated a man who was ashamed of his loss. He had felt terrible since he had worked so hard, and wondered why he couldn't defeat this girl who only had talent. Stella then uttered, "As if I don't work hard." With the battle about to begin, we learn that in mock battles, neither of the competitors will take physical damage, but instead, attacks will drain physical strength. They just need to deploy their devices in phantom form. Ikki then first drew his katana, Intetsu, like a normal blade, but when Stella drew her sword, Levitain, a fiery tornado erupted. Stella went for the first strike that Ikki dodged, which was a good decision since its strike is 3,000 degrees Celsius. She continued her offense, but Ikki dodged, deflected, and fended off strike after strike. Ikki then admitted he's barely making it. He could feel the sword technique she'd been refining. He acknowledged that she wasn't just talented and that she's worked extremely hard. She was surprised he picked up on it, but also wasn't prepared for Ikki to strike back with her same technique. He explained no one had ever taught him, and with him going on the offense with her style, this was the heart of his swordsmanship, known as blade steel. This made Stella desperate, doing an attack that wasn't like her usual and getting blocked by Ikki. He then found an opening to cut her down. Just kidding. Her magic prevented his blade from reaching. She felt bad for having to win like this. She wanted to beat him purely with her sword skills and prove in front of everyone she wasn't just gifted, but admitted the only reason she'd win now was thanks to her magic. So, she'll defeat him with respect by using everything. Stella blew the roof with her flames and launched an overwhelming attack right at Ikki. But suddenly, he was right behind her and dodging every attack with ease. He wasn't getting stronger, but using everything he had with no inhibition. He continued to move, concentrating all the living energy he had into 1 minute, and got the upper hand to truly cut her down. Fainting afterwards from the use of his technique, he was declared the winner. In the infirmary, Stella was relieved, telling the director she'd almost forgotten how it feels to lose. The director then told her Ikki was fine. It's just his noble art. The Itoshura consumes everything in a single minute and can only be used once a day. Stella wanted to know what was going on though. Why was someone as skilled as Ikki ranked F? The director then explained that ranks are only based on abilities as a blazer. Actual fighting ability is not subject to evaluation. At this time, there's no system that could evaluate Ikki. The director felt he was also treated unfairly, yet he still believed in himself and never stopped trying to improve. The director then reminded Stella she decided to travel abroad because she couldn't excel in her own country. They had trapped her in a box called Genius. She suggested Stella learning from Ikki wouldn't be wasted time. Afterwards, Stella made it back to her room, where she found Ikki sleeping. She went to touch him and he rolled over, exposing his back, and touching it certainly made her red. She had never felt the body of a man before, but now things were getting sticky with her arm caught under him. She tried to wiggle out, and she did, but somehow ended up on top of him. Seeing his abs, she tried going for a feel, but pulled herself away, telling herself she was both unmarried and a princess. This would be disgraceful. However, she started justifying that he had already seen her in her underwear. So to get even, she had to touch, and a single touch had her panting. She didn't know what was happening to her, but Ikki also wanted to know what was happening now that he was awake. Stella then screamed, standing up suddenly, hitting her head on the ceiling. After Ikki patched her up, Stella apologized, saying she had despised people who put her in a box. Yet, she put him in a box. She felt bad for not trying to look at who he was, but accepted her loss gracefully. Ikki was glad, because she promised to be his servant, right? Stella tried to deny this at first, so Ikki playfully taunted the royal Vermillion family name, wondering why their royalty couldn't even keep their word for an agreement. Stella then got so mad, she swore to be his servant or dog, and do anything he wanted, even if it was perverted. This really made him chuckle, and here was his first order. He wanted them to be roommates, and with that, they fist bumped to their friendship. And I'd like to fist bump all of you, because we're close to reaching 100,000 subscribers. And when we reach around 99,000 or so, I'll go live on the channel and we can count down reaching 100,000 together, while I respond to chat and play some games that you, the viewer, can vote on. So subscribe and join in on the fun. Just know I appreciate all of you so much. It's the day of Hagen Academy's opening ceremony, and Stella's panting quite a bit, trying to catch up to Ikki's insane 20-kilometer-per-day jogging routine. He tried to assure her she didn't have to do this, since her powerful magic could just compensate for her physical strength. But with her proudly saying, "It's okay, didn't I finish today?" Ikki acknowledged how competitive she was and offered her a drink from his water bottle. She got flustered because this would be an indirect kiss, and when he apologized, she took it right from his hand and started chugging. Regardless, Ikki was happy because his sister would be enrolling into the academy today, and it's been 4 years since he last saw her. Stella then questioned if his sister was blood-related or not, and when he assured her she was blood-related, Stella said she'd allow it. On their first day of class, they were introduced to their exhausted-looking teacher, Yuri Oriki, who insisted they all call her Yuri-chan, and Ikki promised Stella she was a good teacher. Yuri then reminded the students that this year, the representatives for the Battle Festival wouldn't be based on rank, but instead school tournaments where the top 6 winners would represent the school. Matches would start next week, so everyone needed to check their emails regularly. She cheered everyone on, and then erupted into an intense nosebleed. In the infirmary, we learned she vomits a liter of blood per day, but she was also the one who helped Ikki get into school last year. Walking into the halls, the head of the newspaper club, Kagami Kusakabe, grabs all over Ikki because she's become a big fan after his match with Stella. She wants to interview Ikki and put him right on the front page. Stella then gets jealous and starts walking away, prompting Ikki to run after her. This is when a familiar voice of a girl says, "I finally found you." Shizuku Kurogane, Ikki's sister, was so happy to see him again. A little too happy that she pushes him into the wall and kisses him right in the lips. Stella wonders what in the Alabama is going on here, but with no shame, Shizuku responds, "Kissing, of course. Kissing is proof of affection. It is done even between a man and a woman in a shallow, fragile, and miserable relationship like lover. So it's only natural that a brother and sister united by a strong bond do it as well. It's even a greeting in foreign countries." Oh my god, this girl is huffing copium. Stella shouts, "Siblings don't kiss like that in her country." I don't think they kiss like that in any country. However, this doesn't deter Shizuku responding, "That's them. This is about us." Going in for another kiss, but Stella pulls her off. Shizuku isn't happy about this, and the two begin arguing about the ethics of it. Questioning what Stella's relationship is with Ikki, she shouts, "He's her master and she's his servant," getting Kagami excited to hear the scoop on this scandal. The headline of the issue would be, "Struggle in my arms. A bonded princess servant and her savage roommate in closed room for 72 hours. Ikki thinks she's got it all wrong, but Stella doesn't. She remembers him saying, "Stella, sleep with me in the same bed." But he denies, saying anything like that in such an indecent tone. Shizuku then begins laughing maniacally, saying she'd free her big brother now. She summoned her sword, Yorishigure, and declared she'd win, since her water element had an advantage over Stella. Stella then drew her blade, and called Shizuku's modest, just like her chest. Shizuku countered, calling Stella's chest big, classless, and wastefully large, and they both went on the offense and caused an eruption. Later, the director reminded them the use of devices in other than a permitted area is forbidden. Normally, they'd be suspended but were let off just having to clean the restrooms together for a week. And they insulted each other cleaning all 27 restrooms into the evening. After their bantering, Shizuku told Stella to stay away from her brother, and she'd never understand how he feels, because she's not a member of the Kurogane family. He's been treated like he never existed his entire life. Stella was shocked. She wanted to know more details about this, but Shizuku refused to elaborate. Coming back from his run, Ikki was surprised to find Stella waiting for him, and after giving him his water bottle, she asked if he was treated like he didn't exist, causing him to spit his drink. He knew the story would be depressing, but he was ready to tell it. Ikki spoke of the legendary hero, Ryoma Kurogane, who led Japan to victory in the past World War. Ryoma was his grandfather and the person he aspired to be. For generations, the Kurogane family had produced brilliant blazers, but he wasn't gifted at all, so his parents and relatives treated him like he didn't exist. One day, he just couldn't take it anymore and went out into a blizzard because he just didn't want to be around his family. Blizzard got so intense, he had prepared himself for death, but on the other hand, felt so frustrated dying like that. And that's when Ryoma appeared before him. He said, "Are you frustrated, boy? To the fact that you're the weakest one? If so, hold on to that feeling. That's the proof that you haven't given up on yourself yet." And he carried Ikki back to safety. From that moment, Ikki decided he wanted to be just like his grandfather. So that way, when he encountered people who were in the same situation he was, he could tell them the same words. But with no one teaching him, Ikki was always alone. Stella had also felt alone in her upbringing. Even getting into the school though, things hadn't gone so smoothly last year. Ikki revealed the Kurogane family didn't like the idea that a failure like him could become a knight, so they pressured the school. That's when a minimum magic level to take classes was created last year by the previous director to prevent him from graduating. Luckily, the director is Shinguji-sensei now, and despite knowing the harassment would probably continue, Stella knew he wouldn't give up. She did want to correct him on one thing he said earlier though, and he finished her thoughts. It wasn't just that she was competitive, they both were. Back in Shizuku's dorm with her roommate, Nagi Arisuin, she conveyed her perspective of her past with her family. The day she learned her family had mistreated Ikki, she despised all of them from the bottom of her heart. From that point, she decided the fatherly love, motherly love, brotherly love, and sisterly love, she'd give all of it to Ikki herself. Nagi was glad she could express all of that in just their first time meeting, and told Shizuku she could think of him as her big sister. Later, after cooking dinner, Stella decides to give Ikki a very lewd bath. In fact, too lewd for YouTube, so I won't be showing it. On another day, Ikki and Stella decided to have an intense training session, and wiping sweat after finishing, Stella explains she got assigned her first match against Momotani, a third-year student. Trying to help, Ikki started explaining Momotani's skills, but Stella stopped him, because she wanted to treat this like training for when she'd encounter unknown blazers in the future. Ikki thought it was so funny that they were opposites in a lot of ways, yet got along like no one else, making Stella flush red. The first bell then rang, so it was time to head to class. But Stella stopped him to nervously mention it was Friday today. With the weekend coming, she wanted to ask him on a date, but failed to get the words out before he got an email from Shizuku that she wanted to go shopping with him tomorrow, and he replied he'd be happy to. On Saturday, Shizuku was smiling and Stella not so much. Shizuku wondered why a princess would tag along with commoners, so Stella justified she asked Ikki to bring her along because she wanted to learn more about Japan. Then, Nagi introduced himself, telling them to call him Alice, making Ikki somewhat uncertain considering Alice's figure. But Alice blushed, telling Ikki not to look him up and down so directly. Alice assured Ikki he was biologically male, but his heart was that of a maiden. Oh no, it's getting into BL territory. But Shizuku wasn't gonna let that happen. The group then went to get drinks and crepes, and noticing there was some ice cream on Shizuku's mouth, Ikki wiped it off and ate it, making Shizuku lose her mind. But now Stella wanted him to do the same, albeit she definitely overdid the cream. So he left to go get her a towel. Shizuku then sighed, now knowing her love rival was definitely somewhat stupid. Trouble was afoot at the mall. With Ikki and Alice in the bathroom, some masked men came blazing in, shooting it full of holes. However, Alice kept the two safe with her technique, but now they had to go check on Stella and Shizuku. Alice then used her device, Hermit of Darkness, to open a portal and move around the shadows. In a security room where the criminals had already tied up the mall workers, Ikki learns from the director that the criminal organization is asking for a large sum of money. The police asked for their assistance, so she's giving the four of them approval to use their devices. In the center of the mall, the criminals had all the women and children in a hostage situation, and this is where Shizuku and Stella crafted a plan. A woman begged one of the criminals to not hurt her child, prompting him to knock her away, but then her kid tossed an ice cream at the man's head, so the man kicked the kid over and began to shoot. But Stella blocked it with her flames. The man began shooting at her, but it was useless against her magic armor. She had no intention of fighting, she just wanted to negotiate with their boss. And that's when the boss, Bisho, appeared, telling the man to stop shooting. Bisho gave a grand welcome to the second princess of the Vermillion Empire, and then he threatened the child's mother. Stella then dove in to attack, but wasn't expecting to get blocked, and then the wind knocked out of her by the criminal boss. But this was his device, Judgment Ring. The left ring absorbs attacks, and the right ring releases the attack absorbed, meaning Stella was punched by her own full force. Bisho respected Stella's noble code, risking her own body to protect the commoners. So, he offered her a proposition to save everyone by kneeling down on the ground, fully naked. And above, from the shadows, Ikki was getting pissed. Stella felt embarrassment and shame stripping herself, and as she went to take off the last bits, Alice had to restrain Ikki to prevent him from blowing their cover. Alice knew Shizuku's ability to control magic was the best at their school. He wanted Ikki to trust it before they acted. Then suddenly, Shizuku summoned a giant water barrier to protect the hostages, and even with the criminals shooting, the wall protected everyone within. So now, it was time for Ikki to move. Bisho and his men noticed and began firing upwards, but after Ikki activated Itoshura, it was pointless. He sacrificed his ability to see color and used the resources from that to receive only necessary information. He then jumped and scaled the mall, dodging bullets along the way, efficiently making his way to Bisho and instantly slicing his left arm off. And Alice followed up, locking Bisho in his shadow, leaving Stella to finish off the rest. Ikki then ran to embrace her, and after Shizuku brought Stella's clothes, Ikki fell from the ground from the rebound of Itoshura. But it wasn't over, because there was actually one criminal left who had been hiding amongst the hostages. She commanded them to free Bisho and let them go. Then suddenly, Bisho and the female criminal got shot and met their end. No one knew where the shots came from until Shizuya Kirihara revealed himself, and even Alice acknowledged she couldn't sense his presence. Shizuya then came up saying, "Long time no see, Ikki," giving the most cynical smirk. Outside, several girls were fawning over Shizuya, but he cockily remarked he didn't do much. Ikki then went over to thank him, but Shizuya's response was to only mock Ikki and his weak magic. Stella defended Ikki, she was so mad, but Ikki stopped her. This only made Shizuya break into laughter, as he got up to say Ikki should tell Stella the truth, that he's a coward who ran away from their battle last year. He then told Ikki to check his email, and Ikki was horrified to see his first opponent for the selection matches was in fact Shizuya. The first selection match begins with Stella versus Momotani, known as the Heavy Tank. His Goliath device is a rare armor that releases immense power. Brandishing her sword though, Stella can already tell Momotani understands the situation he's in, unlike the crowd cheering. Selection matches are real fights, so unlike an exhibition, competitors will sustain real injuries. Knowing this, Momotani has been heaving heavily the entire time, and he falls, surrendering before the match even begins. We then turn to a tape Ikki is watching to study Shizuya's battle techniques, and he imagines himself getting fatally shot. Stella arrives back, and the two talk about Shizuya's technique, Area Invisible, which makes his appearance, sense of presence,
and smell impossible to detect. It's the perfect stealth camouflage, so he never fights head-on, but instead always from a safe distance. Ikki laughs somewhat nervously, stating that if Shizuya were matched against Stella, he'd withdraw immediately because of her overwhelming power and wide-range attacks. Shizuya never fights opponents he can't win against. In fact, his style is so far from knightly, he was nicknamed the Hunter. Stella thinks he should have been called the Chicken instead, but despite this, Shizuya has a clear advantage over Ikki's style and techniques. Stella is worried about him, although Ikki says he's fine and found a way to succeed. Later, taking a run, Ikki is haunted by his last year trauma with Shizuya, telling himself he can't lose. Alice stops him in the middle and decides to inquire more about that incident with Shizuya. Basically, the Kurogane family wanted the school to find more reasons to expel Ikki, so they hired Shizuya for the job, who tried to provoke a duel, even though Ikki had refused. But Shizuya shot him in the back repeatedly over and over again. Ikki couldn't defend himself because the moment he summoned his blade, he would have been immediately expelled. Alice then gave him some life advice. She tells Ikki he's too used to getting hurt and hopes one day someone will show up for him to hear the pain deep within his heart. On the day of the match, 30 minutes before it begins, Ikki tries to concentrate. He struggled so hard all of his life to finally get to his first official match. But with the announcer calling his name because it was time to begin, his vision became red and blurry. With their match beginning, Shizuya used his technique to summon a forest and disappear. And at first, Ikki was able to deflect the arrows and pursue him, but then it reached a point where Shizuya was able to pierce Ikki's body with no counterplay at all. He was getting pelted over and over, which didn't make any sense to Stella. However, Alice commented that Ikki had seemed nervous from the moment their match was announced. Stella could hardly believe this until she thought back to when Ikki had said, "I'll be okay. I'm going to win for sure." She was shaking, knowing he wasn't the type of person to be so certain about battle outcomes. Knowing what he'd been through, there's no way he wasn't nervous. Stella thought things like, "Why didn't I notice sooner? I was the closest person to him." As Shizuya continued to mock and shoot him, the crowd of students then began laughing at Ikki, mocking him for thinking he could ever win the 7-star battle festival. Stella was pissed, because the crowd was full of useless students who had already given up on themselves. And that's when Shizuya hit Ikki with a fatal blow in his organs. And the crowd began shouting, "Worst one!" at the beck and call of Shizuya. Stella got frustrated enough to tell them all to shut up. She shouted,
"Ikki, don't you ever look like that! Don't you ever let me see you giving up! I like you better when you're looking up! You better show me your strength at all times, you dumbass!"
This gave Ikki the courage to stand up once more, and when he slugged his own face to recompose himself, with tears in her eyes, Stella thought he was so cool. Under his breath, Ikki thanked her for the encouragement, and after activating the Ito Shura, he was easily able to catch the next arrow fired. He deflected everything with ease, simply sensing all. He used his sword steel technique to reveal Shizuya's logical patterns, and now the hunter became the hunted. Ikki found the opportunity for a finishing strike, where Shizuya was now pleading for his life, only for the forest to dispel in an explosive eruption. With Intetsu only making a light cut on his nose, Shizuya passed out and lost, and now the crowd was in excitement of Ikki's victory, before he passed out from recoil. In the infirmary, Ikki woke up to Stella drooling asleep right by his side. She then screamed awake, realizing Ikki had noticed her embarrassing sleep, and started throwing things at him. But really, she admitted she was so worried about Ikki. This is when Ikki told her, "I like you, Stella. I'm so glad that I met you." Stella got flustered, saying she said she liked him before, but she meant his way of life and his aspirations. Ikki knows, but regardless, he still wanted to confess these feelings. Stella felt it wasn't fair he was being honest all by himself. She then told him to close his eyes to give him an affectionate kiss on the cheek. Ikki then wondered if she felt the same way about him, and when she nodded her head, he quickly went in to embrace her, and the two hugged to the scene of the moonlight and the petals that lit the window. The two then swore to strive for the highest peaks together, so at the finals of the battle festival, they could face each other in the very end. As Stella practiced her swordsmanship, she became increasingly frustrated since she and Ikki had been dating for 2 weeks, but he hadn't tried to make a move on her even once. And on his end, he had just finished winning 5 out of 5 matches, now losing his title of Worst One and gaining the title of Another One. They want to learn swordsmanship from him, certainly making his girlfriend jealous, and the boys are pissed they're losing out to the F-rank reject. Back in their room, Stella tells Ikki he's being too generous. The girls who approached him were already talented blazers, so if he taught them swordsmanship, he'd just be creating more competition for himself. But to Ikki, he was fine with it, because if that really happened, he felt his teachings would have been worth it. And besides, bad things like what happened at the mall could happen as well, so he'd feel better if everyone was better equipped. She blushed over Ikki's earnest and virtuous nature, and then started bringing up how they'd been dating for 2 weeks now. Maybe it was time to start doing things lovers do, but was stunlocked to see him already sleeping. While training the girls, a group of boys came to bully Ikki because they were jealous, and they armed themselves, with one guy having a gun? Man, he's gotta be from America. However, none of that matters, with Ikki being able to take them all down with just fisticuffs, and scaring the gun guy. A final clap from Ikki puts him on his knees. With Ikki reminding them deploying their devices is against school rules, the boys bow and apologize, admitting their envy of him, and now began pleading for his teachings, so even they became pupils to Ikki's training methods. Later, Stella was surprised to find the large class Ikki had been building. Behind her were some drinks she wanted to offer him, but Shizuku butted in first to give her drink to her parched brother. Shizuku then pointed at the 2 bottles behind Stella's back, and instead of telling the truth, Stella just said she was really thirsty and began voraciously chugging them both. Shizuku then got Ikki to agree to help her with swordsmanship as well, prompting Stella to ask for lessons too. However, he lightly refused and she ran away. She was frustrated, moaning and groaning through school halls until she spotted Alice holding an ultimate game called Private Prince School Academy. She got locked onto one particular character that looked like Ikki. Hearing the boy say, "I can only see you now," she blushed because this was turning out really good. This is exactly how she wanted Ikki to be, only looking at her. No unnecessary sister or any other girls. He then gave Stella the option to choose what they should do next, and she felt at least she could be honest in the game world. When she selected "Don't Go Home," the boy stayed and held hands with her into the evening and kissed her. Things that Stella yearned for with Ikki. As she began to hug herself imagining these things, Ikki suddenly came in, making her frantically scream as she tried to hide the game she was playing. He wanted to invite her to the pool tomorrow because that's where he'd be training everyone, but Stella wondered why since he had no intention of training her. However, he wanted the chance to explain his reasoning. Sitting on the bus together, Stella giggled, remembering Ikki had told her she already surpassed the level where he could teach her. Even then, their sword styles were fundamentally different. His was finesse, while hers was overpowering. He figured teaching her swordplay would mess up hers. He truly wanted Stella to remain someone who goes beyond his imagination, and this reaffirmed the loving feelings she had for him. While training went on, as Stella tried to apply what Ikki had been teaching from afar, she began to choke when Kagami asked how far she and Ikki had gone. And this turned into an embarrassing moment, with Kagami wondering if Ikki used his itoshura at night. But turns out they haven't even kissed yet. Stella had been wanting more, but is too embarrassed to tell Ikki the truth. Being royalty, she was taught from a young age that a girl isn't supposed to say lecherous things, and that she'd be a disgrace. With Kagami goading Stella that she's gotta be, Stella worried that maybe if he thought she was a naughty girl, he wouldn't like her anymore. But Kagami reassured her otherwise and ran to get Ikki to come over. Sitting by themselves, Stella asked him how her bikini looked, and he turned away saying it looked good. The tone of the conversation then took a serious turn, as he asked her if the two of them should keep going like this. After all, for the past 2 weeks, they hadn't been doing much of the lovers' stuff. This made tears well up in Stella's eyes, assuming he'd already lost feelings for her. But this was a complete misunderstanding as he was blushing on his end. She was freaking out, thinking he'd prefer a girl like Shizuku who was always all over him, or a girl like Kagami who was always pressing her chest against him. He went to reach out towards Stella, but she slapped his hand away. The two began arguing, thinking that one another hated each other, but then began fighting over who liked one another more. Stella cited his reaction to her bikini to be superficial, but Ikki responded with his girl looking so cute and sexy. How could he not get excited? He just didn't want her to think of him as a dirty man and hate him. She was also frustrated because she didn't want him to think of her as a slut and be disappointed. And with their last bits of shouting, they both questioned why they were even fighting in the first place. So, Ikki told her calmly that they should just both say what they want to do most with each other, and they both then said they wanted to kiss. They then stared longingly eye to eye, and after Ikki delivered a light peck, Stella asked him if he'd hate a naughty girl who asks for a kiss. He responded that there's no guy who doesn't like a naughty girl. And I'm with my boy, that's all I'm saying. He then asked if she'd hate a guy who looks at her naughty, to which she responded, yeah, she'd hate it, but she'll only allow Ikki, and the two kissed. During another selection match, Ikki was facing off against the sonic speed of one of the student council reps, Ren Tomaru, while Stella had to deal with another council member, Ikazuchi Saijo, who spun his Zanbato with intense force. However, Stella destroyed his device with a single slash, and Ikki had also put his opponent into submission. While the group walked together, the two girls curled up on Ikki when he confirmed there was someone stalking him. A girl had been stalking him apparently for the past week in the most ridiculous way that Alice had noticed. When she got exposed, she clumsily tripped over and fell into the water. In the infirmary, Ayase Ayatsuji, a third-year student, admitted being pretty embarrassed looking into a boy's eyes. Ikki then realized she was the daughter of Kaito Ayatsuji, a gifted swordsman known as the Last Samurai. He's won in all major tournaments in Japan in swordplay, but he's not widely known because he's not a blazer. Ikki began fanboying because when he was little, he used to study Kaito's swordplay by watching his videos. This is when things took a depressing turn, with Ayase explaining her father was hospitalized after his last match. But she was happy someone as strong as Ikki idolized her father. More importantly though, Shizuku wanted to know why she was stalking her brother. She was concerned that Ayase had been staring at him with a dirty desire in mind. To which Ayase assured them she just wanted some guidance in swordplay from Ikki. She'd been practicing her father's technique, but was stuck in a slump and didn't know how to get out. But she's also quite antisocial, so the entire week she had been trying to figure out how to talk to him. Later, during training, Ikki noticed Ayase's foundation was pretty good, but also noticed she spent so much time imitating her father, it prevented her from improving. The real problem is that with her being a woman, her body structure was different from her father's, and thus, her muscles developed differently. Excited to hear his discovery, she took a stance at Ikki's request, and got red as he began adjusting her leg. And now using what he taught her, her strike was far more swift. But of course, Stella wasn't happy with Ayase getting so close to her man. That night, Stella asked how it felt to touch Ayase's body everywhere. But of course, Ikki didn't think much of it. She then reached up because she wanted him to hold her hand, and holding it, he told her to believe in him. He was just trying to help Ayase improve. Stella knows, but she couldn't help feeling a little insecure. However, Ikki reassured her, telling her she was the only one he liked, causing her to get on her tippy toes to kiss him. After Ayase and Stella practiced swordplay, Ayase treated the two to dinner that night, where Ikki felt maybe 4 servings of mixed grill and 3 steaks was a bit much for Stella to be eating. Ayase was grateful for what Ikki had taught her, but she yearned to get stronger quicker. She was determined to take back what was taken from her. She then freaked out hearing the voice of some thugs calling her name. Their leader, Kurado Kurashiki, a third-year student from Tonro Academy, poured Ikki an apology drink and then smashed the bottle on his head, saying he loved to destroy sword-loving bastards. He then challenged Ikki to a fight, and as Stella was getting ready to burn Kurado to a crisp, Ikki stopped her. Ikki kept his smile on as Kurado spit in his face, and the thugs eventually left. Afterwards, Ikki explained he couldn't draw his device, knowing he'd easily get expelled, but he could also tell Kurado was very strong. That's when the vice president of the student council, Utakata Misogi, and Kanata Tokubara Student council accountant informed Ikki's choice was correct, since Kurado placed top 8 at the previous battle festival, and Ikki would have for sure been expelled. Walking back, Ayase was about to explain her situation with Kurado, but was stopped with both hers and Ikki's phones ringing. They had just gotten the email notification of being each other's opponents, and with Ayase looking mortified at Ikki, she ran away. Ayase stopped showing up for Ikki's training sessions, and later that day, Alice and Ikki both surmised Ayase would attack Ikki somehow before the festival, since she knew she had no chance of beating him. She was desperate to get into the battle festival, and even one loss was enough to end her chance of qualifying. This is when Ikki revealed the email he got from Ayase that read, "I have something very important I can only talk to you about. I need your help. I'll be waiting at the rooftop of Building 11 at 3 a.m. Even knowing this was an obvious trap, Ikki felt Ayase was a kind person, so he decided to see her anyway.
Ayase tactically summoned her device and fell off of the roof, knowing Ikki would expend his Itoshura to save her, dripping wet from the pool of water he landed in. He asked her why she did this, learning it was all a ploy to get him to expend his ace in the hole before their battle that day. Knowing their selection match would begin in 10 hours. He felt betrayed. He couldn't understand why Ayase would throw away her pride just to win, but she had no answers for him. Safely lying in her bed, Stella was muttering, "No, Ikki, not in here. Not your Itoshura of the night. People can see us," in her sleep. She then woke up to a loud thud of Ikki landing on her in the middle of the night. He woke up in the infirmary, with 4 hours left until his match was to begin. The director then pulled him into her office, confirming Ikki was the one who destroyed the side of the building last night when he jumped off of it to save Ayase. But he refused to tell the director Ayase was the reason why. He then asked the director about Ayase's father, who about 2 years ago became unable to wield a sword ever again. He had lost a one-on-one battle when his school was challenged, where Kurado, the sword eater from Tonro Academy, defeated him. And per their agreement, Kurado took the land and building that belonged to the Ayatsuji family as well. On top of that, Ayase's father has also been unconscious for the last 2 years. Ayase herself was frustrated, because Kurado wouldn't even accept her challenge. That's why she needed to get into the battle festival, so she might have a chance to fight him. She wanted to get everything back. With her match beginning, she drew her device and scattered cherry blossoms around her. There wasn't any information on Ayase as a blazer because she hadn't fought in any official matches in the prior years. And so far in all of her matches, she's won using only her sword techniques. Ikki attempted the first strike, only to get blown back by a flurry of slices he couldn't even see. She had layered the arena with slashes she left earlier, and her device has the ability to reopen and slash out from where they've been placed. If any of the proctors found out, Ayase would definitely be disqualified, because placing traps beforehand was against the rules, so her goal was to finish Ikki before anyone could realize. But with Ikki blocking one of Ayase's slashes with an irregular guard, he thinks back to when he had told Yuri-sensei Ayase was definitely going to break the rules. However, he requested she overlook it on purpose. He didn't want to disqualify Ayase and end their friendship. Despite Stella being annoyed, she was proud of the man she loved. The battle continued with Ikki dodging slash after slash, until he defeated her, and she not only accepted her defeat, but also her wrongdoings and her morals that corrupted her decisions. He then offered to get back what her family had lost in her stead, and holding out his hand, Ayase was reminded of her father, and she broke down in tears as she pleaded for help. Walking together, Stella reads a report on Kurado describing him as a bad guy who storms into other schools unofficially, and destroys martial arts schools around town. This is when Ayase retold that fateful day from 2 years ago, when Kurado had beaten her father using only sword techniques. No matter how many times her father had gotten knocked down, he kept going until he suffered a fatal strike. And that's when Kurado claimed their home and dojo. They arrived at the Ayatsuji dojo, which was covered in graffiti now. Ikki then arrived at where Kurado was resting to challenge him to a duel on behalf of Ayase. The only reason why Ikki is willing to duel now is because device use is prohibited outside of school, except at an accredited martial arts school and when the school master gives permission. Kurado was certainly interested, but he wanted to see Ikki's qualifications as a swordsman first. So, Ikki dropped the school badges of all the cronies he defeated before he came inside. He wasn't going to waste any more time. Kurado then summoned his wicked bone snake of a sword, Orochimaru, and with Ikki drawing his, it was on. Kurado went on a relentless assault that Ikki staved off. But when Ikki tried to retaliate, something felt off. Regardless, Stella still believed in him. After sustaining a slash in the stomach, Ikki figured out the root of Kurado's techniques. He has insane reflexes that are twice the speed of both Ikki and Stella's. This was the first time someone had discovered Kurado's secret. Despite knowing this, Kurado still had the advantage. Ayase wanted to stop them, but Stella just told her to trust Ikki. Plus, she can tell Ikki is having so much fun fighting a strong opponent. This is when Stella questioned if Ayase's father was really defeated with mortification. Stella didn't believe a man who was famed in the world of swordplay wouldn't be happy living every day just rusting away. Perhaps he was excited for the challenge, just like Ikki was now, something Ayase went on her knees for, finally knowing she had misunderstood everything. Even Kurado confirmed the last samurai had smiled during his heated battle before he was incapacitated. And with that, Ikki pierced through, using a technique Ayase's father was famous for, defeating Kurado honorably and winning the dojo back. Later, with Ikki and Stella sitting together on a bench, he got a message from Ayase that her father finally recovered. With a peaceful end to this case, Stella decided to grab his hand, causing Shizuku and Alice to pop up out of nowhere. The couple was so embarrassed at their PDA, they pretended they were thumb wrestling. Things have really changed for Ikki, with now no one calling him the worst one after his 12th victory. Him and Stella riding on a bus together, we learned the director was nice enough to invite them to the school's training camp in Okutama, since they were the hope of the first years. Stella thought of this as a premarital trip for them, and staring at the beautiful scenery, she prodded Ikki to take her to the waterfall later. Walking along the way, Ikki offered his jacket, making Stella blush in happiness, enjoying all the lovers' gestures. However, in front of them appeared the student council, and thus, the training began with a game of badminton. Courtesy of Renren's sonic speed versus Stella's intense flames. With orders from the council, Stella had to clean the place since Hagen was set to have their official training camp here a month from now. Turns out, the director didn't invite Stella and Ikki out of kindness at all. She really invited them to help at the student council's request. And also, the president, Toka Todo, had been interested in meeting Ikki, although she's running a bit late today since she had an errand to run. With the cleaning done, Stella and Ikki decided to head towards the waterfall, but Stella suddenly seemed exhausted standing against a tree. Ikki felt something was weird since she only had 2 large bowls at lunch today, when normally she'd eat 7. Stella was flustered at him calling out her gluttonous behavior, but she assured him she was fine, since the two of them were finally alone. Eventually, the clouds became dark and stormy, and Stella became really dizzy. She admitted her body felt heavy, she was dizzy, and also could throw up at any time. She then became concerned if their kiss from the other day got her pregnant, which Ikki of course couldn't believe. He then explained it was probably a cold, which made a lot more sense. She'd actually never been sick before, so she had no idea. Ikki then lifted her up, and it rained at the worst time. All while in the trees, someone had been watching them. The two then settled in a mountain lodge with a fire, and checking her head, we learned Stella had a high fever, so Ikki prompted her to take off her clothes since they were lowering her body temperature. She hesitated, so Ikki's solution was to take his clothes off too, making Stella giggle. It reminded her of the first time they'd met. Ikki then helped her undress, and quickly put a cover over her, and seeing how excited he was, Ikki apologized because he couldn't control it. However, Stella didn't mind, as long as it was him. It even made her happy. There was then tension within their silence, and Stella broke it by asking if he wanted to do it with her, making Ikki's jaw drop. He was certainly tempted, but he apologized, saying he couldn't right now. He expressed that he wanted to be able to tell everyone he proudly liked her, but if he did what she suggested right now, then he felt he couldn't be proud in front of either of their parents. Stella accepted this, understanding he was serious about their relationship. But as Ikki stepped away for a phone call from the student council, Stella sighed, feeling like what she had asked for was too naughty. Shizuku was meeting with her and Ikki's father, Itsuki. She had only come because of a letter from her mother, but otherwise had no intention of being familial with him. But turns out, he was the one who made their mother write the letter, since he could tell Shizuku would have ignored it if it was from him. He was really proud of Shizuku, having won 12 battles already. He believed she was living up to the Kurogane name. She was frustrated with him though, since he refused to acknowledge Ikki in his victories. Then she stormed out. Back at the cabin, Ikki noticed a big stomping going on outside. and decided to check it out. A large golem was above the cabin, and it began to strike at it, prompting Ikki to activate Ito Shura and save Stella faster than one could blink. He put her down somewhere safe and began to fight it. However, the rocks would come apart and reform, so this wasn't working. The golems nearly got to Stella, but then suddenly, Renren appeared to save her. Along with Ikazuchi, they figured the golems must be controlled by magic from a blazer afar, and that's when Student Council President Toka appeared, using her thunderous strikes to quickly destroy all the golems, and unleashing an attack so powerful, it traced back to the blazer in control and electrocuted him. With the sun coming out, that's when Ikki could finally see the woman who placed top 4 at last year's 7-star battle festival, the strongest knight at Hagen Academy, Toka Todo. From a young age, Shizuku had watched Ikki getting abused and promised to follow him no matter what. Sitting with Alice, Stella and Ikki never discovered who the assailant that summoned the golem was, but what they were more worried about now was Shizuku's scheduled match against the student council president. Fighting in a field of ice Shizuku created, Toka began to close the distance with movement Shizuku couldn't perceive. The crowd could see Toka was moving at a normal pace, but it was revealed she knew an ancient martial arts technique that allows one to move in a way the human brain can't process efficiently, causing Shizuku to react sluggishly. And even with a slew of powerful attacks from Shizuku, only a single slash from Toka was needed to end the match. That night, she cried in Alice's arms, having lost, but everyone was proud of her effort. During her 14th match, Stella burnt her opponent to a crisp. Walking with Ikki, she brought up the promise the two of them made to get to the finals of the battle festival and fight each other in the very end, with a creepy man spying on them and snapping a photo. In the director's office, she asked Ikki if he knew about Akaza from the International Federation of Magic Knights. Ikki explained they had met a few times while he still lived at his parents' place, and that Akaza is a member of the Kurogane's branch family and working under his father, but he might have been the one behind the attack back at Hagen's training camp. Stella and Ikki then paid a visit to the student council room, where they learned that Toka's personality was quite clumsy and stupid, a big contrast to how calm and collected she was in battle. The student council decided to volunteer to play with the kids at a welfare corporation, where the kids recognized Stella because she was a princess. After returning back, Kagami, Alice, and Shizuku came rushing towards them, presenting a tabloid that featured Stella and Ikki kissing. It read, "Crimson Princess, Forbidden Affair." The press was all over it because of Stella's celebrity status, and this pissed Stella off to no end, causing her to erode the newspaper in flames. This prompted Akaza to show up, having to deal with Ikki since he was the head of the Knights Federation, and Ikki's relationship with Stella might be considered an act of misconduct. Stella tried to fight for Ikki to stay, but he had no choice. He was then incarcerated. The Federation's concern was whether or not Ikki had sexual relations with the princess. He denied this and assured them they had true love, but Akaza and the Federation were clearly trying to shut him down and keep him locked up. Over the days, Stella had won another match, with everyone only being fixated on the rumors of their naughty behavior in the dorm they shared. That night, Stella hugged on the empty bunk above her, missing the man she loved, while Ikki was allowed to have his 14th selection match at the Federation. Sitting at lunch, Stella wondered if this was all her fault. She wondered if she should just break up with Ikki, but before she could finish her statement, Shizuku shot her with water. Shizuku wasn't going to let Stella insult her brother's heart. The whole reason he allowed himself to be locked up was because the tabloids and Akaza violated Ikki and Stella's relationship and intentions. Stella thought back to how Ikki said he wanted to be proud of their relationship, and his feelings resonated in her heart. She knew Ikki was trying to protect her. He was fighting for her. So on night 7, she sliced a lock of her hair. On day 8, Ikki was exhausted after winning his 16th match. Yuri caught him, and with her coughing blood up, she made the opportunity to slip Stella's lock of hair in his pocket. Sitting in his room, he unfolded the paper containing Stella's hair, and he smiled knowing she was still with him in spirit, still believing in him with everything she had. Knew that she must have still been winning her fights to keep her promise. So, Ikki requested to meet with his father and deal with his past, which was acknowledged. Hearing his father had followed his selection match victories, somewhere inside, Ikki got excited hearing he might be getting validated by his family. However, after his father shut him down and called him mediocre, Ikki's spirit broke. Ikki's father never hated him. He just never had any hopes or feelings for him. Ikki cried because there was no bond between them from the very beginning. After another victory, Ikki understood all he ever wanted was for his father to understand he wasn't weak, but even that was hopeless.
At the stand, Akaza let Ikki know his final opponent would be Toka Todo, and if he were to win, the Federation would get off of his back. If he were to lose though, he'd lose his right to be a Magic Knight forever. On the final day of the selection matches, Ikki and Toka's battle was set to be broadcasted to the entire world. There was a problem, however. Ikki hadn't shown up yet, and if he didn't appear within 15 minutes, he'd be disqualified. Akaza was supposed to escort him by vehicle, but he didn't, so Ikki was running all the way there. On his way, his thoughts only shut him down, telling him he was worthless. But Shizuku caught him and gave him courage, and his classmates called out to encourage Ikki as well. Stella then raised her representative medal, reminding him he had to get his next, so he kept moving forward with his promise in mind. Even though Toka knew he was worn out, she wasn't going to hold back to honor their fight. And Ikki was just as serious. He activated Ito Shura right away, something Stella knew he had decided on probably prior to the match. The two combatants went for a single strike with everything they had, and with Toka's blade shattering, Ikki was the last one standing. He was on the verge of collapsing, but refused, knowing Stella was running his way. Akaza then appeared with his device, but Stella knocked him out of the way. Ikki then fell into her arms. She told him he did good, but she also scolded him for fighting so recklessly. Regardless, she loved him for the way he was, and Ikki knew this warmth had saved him. Looking right at her, Ikki proposed their marriage, and in front of the crowd watching, she cried tears of joy. She was more than happy to be his bride. They then kissed while the crowd cheered on national television. Later, in the school auditorium, the director introduced the 6 representatives for Hagen Academy in the 7-Star Battle Festival, with Ikki being announced as the leader, and he held their school flag with pride. Outside, Ikki and Stella were trying to have a moment, but of course, Alice and Shizuku had to ruin it. With 2 more years until they all graduated, Shizuku planned to teach Stella everything she needed to know as a bride of the Kurogane, but then the two started fighting over him. What a peaceful end to this story. Like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. Also, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.